it's Greg Ellers. I'm back on Einstein's disease. In our second block here, we're fortunate to have with us Matt Renner, CEO of PassPass. Matt, thanks for joining us in this second segment.
Yeah.
In the first segment, we got a little bit of an understanding of your history, an understanding of some of the challenges and where you are today. But in this segment, we're going to kind of go back and help our viewers understand, because you touched on something that's important, and that's the building wealth aspect of being in a business. And being in a business and a career, what you were trying to explain was you can't create wealth or build wealth if you're a job hopper. So when you were starting, you were just an employee. You were fortunate, hard work makes good luck.
Yeah.
Your friends became the CEO. That gave you a position of leadership. You had to start to identify people that you wanted to work with you. And you didn't want everybody to be Matt. You had to have different people, diversity, because they're doing different roles.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about how you decided or how you determined what types of people you wanted to surround yourself with to create a good environment for everybody, and what you did when you had that squeaky wheel.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're building a business, there's a couple of business rules that I followed. And one was I felt like you needed a system around people to identify people that work for your business. There's a lot of great people that when you hire them, you think they're going to fit because maybe their experience or maybe they have a Rolodex or whatever it is, right? And then they get into the business and it doesn't work out. And you say, well, was that a bad person? Probably not. You probably just didn't have a system for identifying the type of people that worked best in your business. So I didn't invent anything new. I kind of followed a system that was invented by Salesforce, the people that grew that company. And we would look for certain traits and we would analyze our top performers in the business and say, okay, what do these people do? What are their unique traits? Whether it's grit and tenacity, perseverance, and teachability, coachability, all these things. We had a matrix and we would look at that and say, okay, when we're hiring someone, we want to hire for these particular traits. We don't necessarily care if they have experience in this industry. We just want to see if they fit the mold of who works well in this business for us with the types of products we sell and how we service. And then after a few months of bringing them on board, we would look back and say, well, do we still think that they match up to those characteristics? And we would tweak. And it wasn't always perfect. You would miss. But, our goal was to hire people that would have long-term careers and that could build value and wealth for themselves and their families, and because it's much more expensive to replace people, and constantly hiring new people presents challenges and growth. It slows your growth if you make mistakes hiring. And so I would just say that building systems in anything, especially people, don't just hire someone to hire them. Have a reason why and a theory of who works well in your business. And if you do that, you'll probably hit on more people than not. And I think that was probably central to our growth.
No, that makes sense. You're hiring, quote unquote, it's an overused term, but you're hiring an athlete versus hiring a specialist.
Yeah.
And so what you talked about, you were hiring for the longevity, and just share with the viewers a little bit. It's really expensive when you lose somebody.
Yeah.
You've got clients, you've paid somebody, you've trained them. How, when you were in difficult situations with people, would you try and find if they hit on some of the metrics as you talked about? You said, well, did we get this right? Did we miss something? Would you move them around? I mean, because they already know a little bit about your company. They know something. If they're fitting into the culture, but they can't do something, would you keep them? How would you do that? And on the same line, when you had to really make that difficult decision, talk about the communication because everybody out here, watching our show, they've either lost a job, maybe they're going to lose a job, maybe they've gotten fired. What's the way that you give messaging to people? So start with the positives and then kind of work into the negatives on the back end of this question.
Yeah, so I think on the question of do you move people around if they're a culture fit, um, I'm not a fan of creating jobs for people because they fit the culture. I think if you use the analogy of a sports team and you have a kicker that can't kick field goals, right, or a goalkeeper that can't save, goals, but they're great in the clubhouse, do you create some other position for them on the team? Probably not. Do you try to retrofit a kicker into a linebacker's body? Probably not. So that's probably not a good thing unless the business dictates it, right? Unless the business calls for it, or there's some strategic reason to leverage that person's abilities to execute the plan. So in that case, if you have to move on from someone, or, I always just start from human first. They're a human, they have a family. If you hired that person and they failed, I would say that's my fault first, right? Maybe I made the wrong hire. Maybe I didn't manage it well enough. I didn't give them the tools, whatever it is. And so I'm always going to lean towards thinking about the human first, trying to help them, trying to find somewhere else they can go be successful, because they will be successful if they're a good person, hard worker, they have perseverance. They just might not be successful at this company. And I think it's always just better to be, truthful in those situations. There's other times where if you're in a little bit bigger business, you might have certain legal things to think about. We live in a very litigious world. You have to understand the state you live in, the regulations that you have around you, and how you handle those things. But in general, I just think taking a human first approach, right, thinking about them, trying to help them as best you can, and ultimately take responsibility and try to learn what you could have done better to make them successful. I always learn, Greg, if you help people get what they are after, that you'll eventually get yours, right? If you can help other people become successful, you by nature will become successful with them if your goals are aligned, and if you're working on the same things together, you have the same incentives. So that would always be, it's always going to be my approach.
No, it's a great approach. It's something a lot of young entrepreneurs, especially in today's day and age, Matt, we're in a period where there are more people that believe, I just want to have my own job. I want to have my own opportunity. But yet, when we were young, or when I was young, I'm a little older than you, it was always the school of hard knocks. Mm-hmm. And now the school of hard knocks is YouTube, or the school of hard knocks is a quick momentary video. But you really touched on something that's important when you're talking about people. It's the human element first. Mm-hmm. Everybody has something. They come from somewhere. They have expectations, dreams, and hard conversations alter those dreams. They alter those expectations. And a lot of times you hear stories, the best thing that ever happened to me is I got fired from that job and I started my own company. That's been told 1,000 times. But in today's day and age, there isn't that same level of cognitive communication like you and I are having. We're having a conversation right now together. A lot of times, some of these younger people, they don't have those personal skills. And as we go into, when we go into the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about pass and what you're doing now. But if you can just close this out a little bit about, for the younger generation, about being able to have those honest conversations, because I know that my kids they do a lot of things with text, and I can write you a text and go, wow, that guy was really not very nice.
Yeah.
So if you could just kind of share on that human element, because at the end of the day, humanity really is what matters the most.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've learned some hard lessons of sending emails, or people. It's hard for people to understand your context, your voice, your face, when you're communicating that way. So it can be difficult. I think if you're if you're an employee or you're somewhere, you should always look at as you're an entrepreneur, right? You're your own entrepreneur, right? Whether you're building someone else's businesses or you're building your business, you're building something, you're working, you're exchanging your time for some value. And in that way, everyone is an entrepreneur. And the best way to get from zero to here is by creating something of value and doing it for a long period of time. Right? And you don't get that by not having relationships. You don't get that by not having communications, not being able to explain your value to someone of power. Everyone has a boss, right? Everyone is working for someone, right? And if you don't develop those relationships, you're going to have a hard time growing, And so, I always encourage my employees, my kids, pick up the phone, have a conversation with someone, go meet someone in person for coffee if you want something. I think the work from home thing is kind of, since COVID, has really put a lot of younger people at a disadvantage because they're working for faceless companies. They're Zooming, everything is digital. You don't get that chance to go down to the bar with your manager at the end of the day and celebrate with a beer or whatever. And I think there's a lot of people that their growth will be stunted because they didn't develop those relationships and the skills earlier in their career where someone could take them under their wing and show them the way. And it's good, you're creating a show like this that can help with that. But that's always it's always important.
Absolutely. So in the next segment, we're going to come back, and Matt really touched on a few things there at the end. We're going to discuss about his new endeavor, PassPass, because it is a business that has a lot of young employees and across the country, and that some of those challenges are things that he's overcoming. With that, we'll be back after we pay for this show. It's Greg Ellers from Einstein's disease. Thank you very much.
Break past limitations and rethink success. Are you ready to push the boundaries of what's possible?